is it that everything happens on a Friday, right? It's either Monday or Friday. Maybe we could get rid of both those days and just go Tuesday through Thursday. Anyway, hi, everybody. Welcome to the Friday edition of Green Rush Live, the regularly scheduled business of cannabis talk show here on Pro Cannabis Media. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. So happy to have a regular co-host whenever we talk about women in cannabis. Who better to have on than the Woman in Cannabis Expo founder, Brooke Westlake. Hi, Brooke.
Hi, Jimmy. How are you? Happy Friday. I agree with that sentiment. Fridays, everything happens on a Friday or right on a Monday, right? It just kind of seems to be the thing. So Monday, I agree. Tuesday through Thursday sounds good to me for a work week.
There you go. There you go. Well, in the meantime, we'll just chit chat. And we do have our very special guest that we do count on every third week. And he is so good and so reliable now. He cuts it to within 10 seconds of us going live stream. So you're giving Dan French a little agita, but I knew you'd be there. Hi, Morgan.
Hi, apologies, Dan.
It's fine. Believe me, he works with me. He's used to having a lot of stress in his life, let's just say. Morgan is, of course, the Director of Government Relations for NORML in Washington, D.C. There's another word for it. It's called lobbyist. Morgan, I'm going to start right off the bat because there a news story that changed within 24 hours. There was talk about perhaps getting safe banking talked about on the floor of the Senate now that they've had, I think an extra few senators go on board here. But then yesterday or today came out this morning that nothing before camp gets over. I mean, August recess gets over. What's the latest?
I mean, that's certainly a possibility, but that's also based on, just what one other lobbyist is saying. So, I think that there's still some time before the end of the month for things to change. We're doing everything we can to pressure members of the Senate Banking Committee to get that on the docket before the August recess. But, this is something that we're sort of expecting, and this is going to be one of the big problems that we face in both chambers is actually getting time on the schedule. There's so much other stuff going on right now in government that it can be difficult to actually get some space made for us. I mean, we saw earlier this year with the Senate Banking Committee that as we were barreling towards having more substantive hearings, although we did get one decent one, that we started seeing all sorts of issues involving other banks crashing, and so that started taking up a lot of their time. In the House side, I think that we're going to see some of the same problems once that version starts moving, and that there are a lot of committees that this is going to have to go through that are spending a lot of time on things that are not cannabis related. So convincing lawmakers that this is actually a priority issue for their constituents is one of the biggest challenges we have. But luckily, that's starting to change.
Yes, I know that, and good luck with that. I do want to ask you something about something you just said. You said you're pressuring senators and other members of the House. How do you go about pressuring? Is it lunch, dinner, or waterboarding? Somewhere in the middle?
I mean, constituent support, I think, is probably the biggest driver. At the end of the day, votes are what matters to most politicians. And so if they're hearing from their constituents on a regular basis that this is something that is not just that they support, but that's something that they view as a priority, it starts to steadily change their mind. I mean, of course, this is a long, drawn-out process, but any chance we get to blow up their inboxes and have their phones ringing off the hook with people saying, we don't just support this, we want it to happen as soon as possible, we'll start to bend the needle a little bit. It's not a guarantee, and it really depends on the individual lawmaker, but it does move the needle.
And speaking of moving the needle, before I'm going to throw it to Brooke in a minute for some questions, but Susan Collins from Maine is now supporting safe banking. Did I read that right?
That is correct. She just signed up as another co-sponsor. I think that we still need to get a couple of Republicans on board, as well as assuage some of the concerns of a small number of Democrats before, I think both I, as well as Senate leadership feel comfortable actually moving forward with this, because we don't want to be in a situation where we're calling it for a vote and McConnell is able to pull enough strings to make sure that it goes down by just a vote or two. So we want to make sure that we've got that solid 60 lined up and ready to go before it actually starts getting serious votes. But in the meantime, that doesn't mean that we can't run it through committees, which I think is what needs to happen as soon as possible, because frankly, a lot of senators, I think, are just waiting to see what happens in committee.
Okay, Brooke, you're on.
Okay, well, Morgan, thank you for coming on with us today. I know you had some concerns because Jimmy and I host every fourth Friday of the month, and we scooted this one up early. And we usually talk about women in cannabis, and that's what we're still here to do. And so one of the questions I have for you, and one of the reasons why you're with us today also, is because you support women in cannabis. And we find that to be equally as important as women in this industry. We need the support from our male coworkers, partners, whoever is there to support us in general. We thank you. So thank you for being here with us today. My question for you is, how many female lobbyists are there lobbying for cannabis within your organization, or who you know about who are there actively, pounding the pavement and creating the ways that all the things that we need to get done?
Well, in terms of actual dedicated cannabis and drug policy advocates that are actually lobbying on the Hill, there are quite a few. I'm NORML's only federal lobbyist, but my former employer, the National Cannabis Industry Association, their government relations team is run by Michelle Rutter-Freiberg. And then when you look at Drug Policy Alliance, their head federal lobbyist is Maritza Perez. And there are a number of other groups that have women in very, very key roles when it comes to lobbying. And then, you even look sort of more behind the scenes. I should also, at DPA, Kat Packer has been doing some amazing work with members of the Senate Banking Committee, as well as others. In terms of some of the more mercenary lobbying firms, I think that there are a number of people that are active there as well. But just in terms of drug policy reform advocates, not professional lobbying firms, there is a significant amount of representation there as well.
And I was also going to add this: those Republicans that you need those votes for, send me their names. I will send them a nice, lovely email. I'm one of the Republicans here in Nevada, and also running for school board again this next following year. So send me their names and I will drop them whatever you guys need support on. I'm happy to send them a letter for you on your behalf from my organization, supporting you guys as well.
Each and every one of them.
Each and every one of them. Okay, got it. I've got the list going right here. Done deal. Promise.
And Morgan, that actually leads into my question. As you know, I'm from Massachusetts. And last time I checked, Ed Markey and Elizabeth Warren are on board with this, right?
Correct.
Okay. So what do I do? Who do I bother? Who do I get in front of?
Well, I mean, just because you're not somebody's constituent doesn't mean that you can't provide information to them and their staff. So, I think that considering that that's 95% of what most lobbyists do, they're not just talking to the people from their home states or wherever they live, which I mean, generally is DC. So, that doesn't mean you can't reach out to somebody just because you're not their constituent.
Okay. All right. Well, I can't threaten that I won't vote for you unless you change your mind, though, right?
No, but you can provide them with the information that they need to make good decisions.
Okay. Fair enough. And I'm ready to rock on that one.
Pointing out polling numbers is usually a good tactic.
Polling numbers, 100%. And by the way, isn't it accurate to say that whenever cannabis is on a ballot question, that the voter turnout is record-setting?
That is actually a very interesting question. And unfortunately, there hasn't been enough real solid study done on this to determine exactly what the relationship is between turnout and the presence of cannabis policy reform initiatives on ballots. I think that it's probably bidirectional. We know when to put cannabis policy initiatives on ballots in order to get the best possible returns for them. But in terms of how the presence of those ballots affect other candidates on the ticket or general turnout, especially in off-year elections or midterm elections. There's still, unfortunately, not a lot of research that has been done about that. And I personally think that it's a fascinating subject. And I think that there's been a lot of variation depending on the state that you're in as well. But this is one of those things where if you want a cannabis policy initiative to perform poorly, you push it onto a special election or an off-year ballot, because the people that tend to show up at those elections also belong to the demographics that are the least supportive of legalization. And so we've actually seen this as a tactic at the state level for opponents who are trying to keep these things either off the ballot or make sure that they go down in flames. If they don't succeed at keeping them off the ballot, usually based on lawsuits over technicalities or challenging the signatures that have been submitted, they will push it to a special election where they know it's going to do more poorly than in, say, a presidential election.
And as always, you speak and I think of other great questions. The situation in Florida, I'm sure you're aware of it. It's like, what is it, the third time that they've been trying to get a single answer question on the ballot about legalization of adult use in Florida? And once again, the Attorney General is involved, and Lord knows you can't blame Trulieve on this one because they put a lot of money behind it. I know that. What's going on in Florida?
Well, this is just another example of something that we have seen cropping up more and more at the state level in places where the ballot initiative process still exists. Prohibitionists know that they have lost the battle for hearts and minds when it comes to this issue. And so they use another tactic that has been fairly successful, which is trying to interfere with the ability to put these questions before the voters in the first place.
Right. I think they interfere with the industry in trying to make it as difficult as possible for the industry to succeed. And I think it has been part of, well, certainly in my state's experience, Massachusetts, it was the governor then, Charlie Baker, now in charge of the NCAA, amazingly, said, we want this industry to crawl before they walk, before they run. And that was within 24 hours of the ballot question being passed in Massachusetts. So, I think, again, it's easy to go with conspiracy theories. The most important thing right now, I think, are the issues that are attached to that Safe Banking Act. And I guess the question I have for you is, what is the status of 280E when and if Safe Banking gets passed?
Well, Safe Banking is not going to directly impact 280E.
Okay.
Yeah, I think right now, the primary issue that I think some Democrats are worried about are the language, the portions of the language that affect banking beyond cannabis, in particular Section 10, which is basically designed to prevent the sort of behavior on the part of the federal government that took place during Operation Choke Point, where banks are warned against working with entire industries. Now, this is something that was negotiated at the end of last year by Senate leadership and Senate Republicans as a way to streamline the agreement process and actually get this thing across the finish line. Unfortunately, we have, in particular, Senator Reid from Rhode Island, who is expressing some concerns about this language, saying that it provides too much coverage for banks and does not provide enough, or it interferes with potential oversight. But unfortunately, this is language that I think is going to be very necessary to keep included if we want to maintain Republican support. Also, I mean, just from my own personal perspective, while this was language that Republicans were much more interested in, particularly because of the history of Operation Choke Point going after industries that are more aligned with a lot of Republican constituencies, such as the firearms industry. That initial crackdown also negatively impacted, escorts, payday loan companies, et cetera. And I think that any Democrats that are concerned about this language being a free giveaway to basically Republican aligned industries should really think about the potential for those same sort of tactics on the part of the federal government being applied to, say, reproductive services providers.
Interesting. Brooke, I bet you can follow that one up with a question.
Oh, I have so many, and I have to agree with Morgan, as well as the limitless amount of data and studies that needs to be done it would be behoove of these young grad students or even students who are in a bachelor's program to actually take a study or report like that on and research and do the data and everything. So I love that this is still such a new industry that there's still viable people to write their thesis statements on and do reports on, but that still doesn't get us to the end goal, which is, as Jimmy and I have had so many conversations, the complication of getting into this industry and the red tape. What would you recommend for women specifically who want to go into this industry? And you know, as much as we know, that the hurdles are relentless, they're hard, they're brutal. What would you recommend? How would you encourage them to come into this new space? Because it is still new, it's still not federally legal. What would be like your selling tactic to a woman to come into this industry?
Well, first of all, NORML is a consumer advocacy. So I think that there are a lot of people who are much more knowledgeable about the processes of getting involved in the industry, depending on the locality. But I think that number one, you have to get involved in the political process and work to make sure that the barriers to entry are as low as possible. But I think the other important part is to make sure that you are learning as much as possible and associated with people that share your values and interests, and particularly as it comes to how you want to do business, what sort of things you want to do to set yourself apart, to look out for your customers in the best possible manner, and to support other businesses in the space as well. You know, there are a lot of people in this industry that are only out for themselves, but the ones that seem to have real lasting power and also be able to more quickly rise within the industry are the ones that collaborate with others and work together to accomplish common goals.
Yeah, collaboration versus competition is a subject to talk about throughout this industry. But coming up in just about, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes or so, is a guy who used to be the original co-host with moi on our news show, on our talk show. His name's Kurt Dalton. He's with Cannabis.net. And a few weeks ago, he posted a newsletter with the following headline. And Morgan, I would love to get your reaction to it, and then we'll tell Kurt about it in a few minutes. The title is, "If Women Ran the Cannabis Industry, Would It Be the Same Train Wreck We See Today?" It's a good headline.
In my experience, women generally tend to do a much better job at running things than men across the board. Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult to tell exactly what this industry would look like, but I know that we absolutely need to do everything we can to try to improve representation across the board, whether it be gender, sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, because we have an opportunity with this relatively nascent industry to change the way that business works, to change the way that the system operates. And, I think that it would be a wasted opportunity if we don't do everything that we can to try to set an example for other existing industries or new industries that might be coming down the pipeline to emulate.
Okay. Hey, Brooke, you got another one for Morgan? Because we're getting up against 4:20. I know.
I know. We're almost there. So Morgan, give me, who's been one of the most inspirational women that you have maybe worked with, or maybe you haven't worked with them, who you've met on this journey of being in the cannabis industry, being an advocate, a political lobbyist, advocating for all the things that I think Jimmy and I want in this industry? Who's inspired you the most as a female?
That list is just so long. Between folks like Stacia Wallace, who was with SSDP for a very long time, for Sabrina Fendrick, who used to be at NORML, Leah Harris at MPP, Karen O'Keefe at MPP. I mean, the list is just so huge.
That's good.
I love that. So it's like your Oscar list. You're like, wait, the timer's going, and you're like, I got to make sure I thank everybody. Very good answer, Morgan. I like that.
That was good. And are you familiar with the Buy Weed from Women Crusade, the T-shirts that if you go into New York, you see them all over the place?
Yeah, I actually first saw those in Colorado.
There you go. Of course you did. Colorado's always the first, right? If it wasn't Colorado, it was Washington. But
Wanda James is another great example.
Oh, well, Wanda James has been ducking us for 2 years. I've been trying to get her on, and now I use my secret weapon, Brooke Westlake, on her. And she's still, you know what? She's going through a difficult personal time right now. So we give space to anybody who's open, honest, and transparent with us. So we know one day we'll have Wanda James on. And Morgan, I may actually have to use the fact that you brought her name up as another way to perhaps close the deal, you know?
And wait, we got to share this with Morgan, because I don't think Morgan knows this information. And Jimmy, you know this information. Wanda was at our Denver show last year, and while at our show on stage, she found out that she won her primary election. While on stage, announced it, like the crowd, we all went crazy. We're like, oh, and then of course she went on to November and won her November election, which she's the university regent down in Colorado, and beat out a former incumbent. And that can be very challenging to do, but her platform and who she is as a person is so strong. She just crushed it, and we will eventually have her on here. She's such a trailblazer. I adore Wanda. I was so grateful that she came to our show, and it was just such a magical moment to watch her win her primary while at our event last year.
Morgan, maybe we need more women in local politics and state politics too. Just saying.
100%.
Yeah, I apologize for my gender and my race all the time on this show. You know, it's just ridiculous that the old white guy from hundreds of years ago really started screwing up our whole thing. And whatever. Let me get off my bandbox before some of my business associates call me and give me a hard time. All right. So Morgan Fox from NORML. What's NORML got coming up that's important we should keep an eye on? Anything in particular, Morgan?
Yeah, for anybody that is involved in the legal community, we've got our annual legal conference coming up in Key West in just a short amount of time. So go to norml.org and check out information for that. You don't necessarily have to be a member of NORML's legal committee to attend, but you know, it gives us an opportunity to try to get you on board. But those events are always fantastic, covering everything from criminal defense to industry law.
There you go. All right. Well, and Key West is a great place to have it. And I was almost there in June of 22, but June of 22 was a horrible year and nothing we could do about it. So it's still on my bucket list. You could send me pictures when you're down there, Morgan. Fair enough?
Well, I'm not going to be attending personally myself, just via Zoom. I've got way too much stuff going on in Congress, but you know, I highly recommend checking it out if you get the opportunity.
There you go. I'll check out Key West for sure. All right, Morgan Fox from NORML, thank you so much for joining us again. We will continue with this Green Rush Live special with Brooke Westlake and our old friend Kurt Dalton in just a few minutes. Don't go away.